I now have the privilege of introducing Thomas J. Donohue, President and CEO of the United States Chamber of Commerce, who will address our graduating class. Mr. Donohue has been an influential force in American business and politics since taking the helm of the Chamber in 1997. He has worked to revitalize capital markets, expand trade and domestic energy production, and protect intellectual property rights. Additionally, he has reinvigorated the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, which supports Hiring Our Heroes, a program that identifies job opportunities for returning veterans and military spouses. His career includes leading the American Trucking Association and service as Deputy Assistant Postmaster General of the United States. A native New Yorker, Mr. Donohue earned a bachelor's degree from St. John's University and a master's degree in business administration from Adelphi University. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Donohue.
Thank you very much. President Schenck, Provost Eamon, Dr. Beerzoff, I'm honored to be here. I'm proud to be part of such a special day in the lives of the men and women receiving their graduate degrees today. As Dr. Schenck briefly mentioned, Marymount and I go way back. I've had the privilege of being a part of its incredible growth. I've sent some of my most trusted staff here over the years to earn their graduate degrees, and in each case, it made them even more valuable as members of our team. To all the graduates here today, let me be among the first to officially congratulate you. This moment belongs to you. It's a testament to all of your hard work. And as with any success in life, gratitude is in order. I encourage you to reflect on all of those who helped you, parents, spouses, family, friends, many of whom are here today. They have been partners in this journey, and today is a celebration for them as well. Reflect a little more and you'll find that there's an even longer list of connections that have helped you. The high school teacher who noticed something special in you long before you noticed it in yourself. The prof who made you miserable for a whole semester and then surprised you by taking your B and making it an A. The roommate who stayed up late to help you study and then dragged you out of bed for your exam after you hit the snooze button for the 5th time. Or, if you're willing to reach even deeper, how about the mid-school bully who bloodied your nose and gave you the determination to toughen up and make something of yourself? Success never happens in a vacuum. I sometimes hear people say, I want to make this all on my own. I don't want to rely on anyone else to get a job. My response always is, too bad. You'll never get a job then. It takes some other person to hire you, to connect you to that person, and to give you the advice on where to look. It takes friends, mentors, acquaintances, chance encounters in the airport, schmoozing at a happy hour, sending Christmas cards to your extended list. It takes a network to build a successful career. That's true no matter what your profession is, and it's true for entrepreneurs as well. I've spent the last 2 decades serving, as Matt indicated, as the president and CEO of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and I've worked with a lot of very smart and successful people, and most of them weren't CEOs. I've worked with leaders in education and medicine and politics and the nonprofit world, and extremely talented staff who have worked with me. Every successful person I have ever met, from small business leaders to U.S. presidents, all share something in common. They have a clear and fundamental understanding of the scarcity and the value of certain resources in their lives and work. For example, they understand they have a talent which is scarce, and they work hard to develop it, leverage it, and use it throughout their careers. They understand that their money is an extremely limited resource, so they manage it and invest it carefully. They understand that knowledge is rare, and the accumulation of it gives you a leg up, so they never stop learning, no matter how old they get. Those resources allow successful people to maximize their contributions, yet they aren't what I am here to focus on today. I want to talk to you about the single, scarcest, most valuable resource of all. I believe wringing as much value from it as you can is the key to achieving success, no matter what your field is. That resource is time. What makes time scarce is that no amount of power or money or influence can get you any more of it. Everyone gets the same amount of hours in a week, 168 hours. It doesn't matter if you're a billionaire, the President of the United States, or all three. You only get 168 hours. You can't buy, barter, or steal anymore. The way you spend that 168 hours will account for much of the difference between you and the person on either side of you. And yet, when you look at those 168 hours, most Americans spend the majority of them in the same basic activities. Let's look a little closer at those hours. First, the average person spends, ideally, between 6 and 7 hours a day sleeping. Let's say that's 45 hours a week. Then most people spend a couple of hours a day in hygiene, showering, dressing, exercise. But then let's be honest, how many times do we skip the exercise? Add to that about 3 hours a day in eating, going to meals, visiting with people at home, and 2 hours a week running errands and doing things that you have to do. Next, most of us also commute somehow to our work and from our work. The average commute is about, let's say, a half an hour. Here in this town, probably take you longer, in either direction, 5 days a week if you're lucky. And last, of course, we have the work itself. It's there where people start to diverge, both in how long they actually work and how hard. But for now, let's focus on what we have in common, and that's, let's say, a 40-hour week. Some people work much more. When we add up everything I've just listed, and I'm sure I've left some things out, we've already used up 127 of those precious hours. That means, for most people, you spend those 127 hours, give or take, doing the same basic activities as everyone else, but not necessarily in the same way. More on that in just a moment. But first, let's look at the time that's left when we subtract those 127 hours from the 168 we started with. You got it. Something around 40, 41 hours remain to spend as you choose or as you're required to do. That's the equivalent of a full-time job. If you only take one thing away from my talk today, I want you to understand this. The people who have the biggest impact are the ones who use those 41 hours the wisest and the smartest. Every successful person I've ever worked with treats those 41 hours like the precious and scarce resource that they are. There is no formula how to divide those hours up. It depends on your strengths, your goals, your responsibilities, your priorities. But it is in those 41 hours that you can set yourself apart. That is when successful people innovate, experiment, take classes, take risks, cause some mischief, Dream, scheme, toil, try and fail, and get up and try again. It is when they pour themselves into relationships that matter the most to them, whether as a father, a mother, a husband, a wife, or a friend, or a child. Remember what I said at the beginning of the speech. Success is not possible without these relationships. Those 41 hours are also when successful people learn new things, whether by reading, taking classes, or hanging out with folks who are smarter than they are. Finally, and perhaps most of all, those 41 hours are when successful people work harder and longer than others. There is no substitute for hard work. Elon Musk recently said that his secret to success isn't much of a secret at all. He works 80 to 100 hours a week. Actually, I don't think that's a smart thing to do. He'll burn down before he thinks. As he put it, if people are putting in 40 hours a week and you're putting in 100, then even if you're not the same level in smarts, you'll achieve in 4 months what it takes them a year. Of course, not everyone has a goal of building rocket ships or running off on a trip to Mars. And I will make this thing work in a quick second. There we go. 100 hours a week is not required to make a big impact, but hard work is. Some of that work might come in the form of learning new things. For most of us today, marks the end of a formal education, but your informal education should never end. I sometimes say, if you stop learning on Thursday night, by Sunday lunchtime, you're beginning to look like a dropout. Now let's talk about one more trick. Earlier I said it was impossible to buy, barter, or steal more time. And that's very true. But there is a way to stretch time, the time you have. It's called efficiency. In addition to using those 41 hours wisely, successful people use them efficiently to squeeze every bit of juice they can out of the other 127. For example, when they're at work, they're really working. They aren't the type who has to hide their online shopping list when the boss walks by. They also see meals not just as a time for nutrition, but a time to activate their network, to deepen their relationships, to broker deals and to study up for the next meeting. They see commuting not just a time for transportation, but as a valuable time to get things done, depending on whether they're driving or riding. They might listen to news, read a book, make a call, or check in with family or friends. Even when they're at the store or getting ready in the morning, they're listening to a podcast or brainstorming for the day. All of you have made it here today by being hard workers. So much of this is common sense. You're clearly skilled. When it comes to managing your time, just never forget it. Nothing I told you here is intended to describe the best way to divide up your time. That's clearly up to you. You have to decide based on your definition of success and the demands of your career. And by the way, it should, I want to say this carefully, this all has to include the closest people to you. How do you deal with your children, old or young? How do you deal with your family? How do you deal with the people closest to you? My advice to you is you just keep in mind what every successful person knows, that your time is scarce, it is the most valuable resource you have, and only you know how to use it. Let me close with one additional thought, because speaking of time, one of the worst ways to spend is listening to an overly long, useless commencement speech. Looking out today at so many bright people with their full careers ahead of them, I'm reminded that, again, time is relative. Surely you've noticed this already. The years from age 20 to 25 seem to go a lot faster than they did when you were in your teens. And as you get older and older, like those of us up here with gray hair, time seems to run by so quickly. The older you get, the clearer it becomes that the best part of working hard and achieving success is making a difference in the lives of others. There is a phrase I repeated many times throughout my life to my kids, to my employees, and to so many others. Years ago, my wife and I donated a window to the chapel here at Marymount inscribed with a special phrase. If you visited there, maybe you see it. It says, "If you can, you must." And yes, if you can, you must, because others occasionally can't. They rely on those of us who can. So if you can achieve the success required to give back, you must. And trust me, each of you can to some degree, especially now that you're graduating from Marymount. It doesn't matter what industry or profession you're in. If you're in medical or counseling businesses, you can touch and save lives every day. For those receiving an MBA, you can create jobs for others. You can take that idea you scribbled on a cocktail napkin and turn it into a new business. For those of you in the field of education, you can shape young people's minds and spread knowledges to new places. There are many other fields of interest represented here today, and all of you can make a profound impact on this world. You can do so through your work itself, through your time spent volunteering, through your financial generosity, or through all of the above. You can, and because you can, you must. Thank you very much.